All right. Hello, everyone. We're glad you're here. I see people are beginning to kind of come in, and we're still waiting for one of our panelists who will join us as she can. We're glad you're here. On Friday the 13th in Texas, actually March 13th, 2020, Governor Greg Abbott issued a disaster proclamation certifying that COVID-19 posed an imminent threat of disaster. And so as a matter of public health, non-essential businesses were closed, as most of you know, and human interaction outside of the home was contained. Considered non-essential was most of the sociable economy, which 24-hour Dallas is focused on, including restaurants, bars, music venues, festivals, arts and cultural organizations, etc. The performing arts, and live music in particular, took a double hit, not only because of the desire to prevent crowds from coming together to minimize any chance of becoming spreader events, but by virtue of the art form itself, music, singing, woodwinds, that's part of the respiratory system. And when you're playing or you're singing, you're also then in close proximity to respiratory airborne droplets, I guess, as they say. So on Friday the 13th in Texas, did music die? That's the question for today's webinar. Our guests today are Kate Durio. Kate is senior U.S. project lead with an organization called Sound Diplomacy. She'll talk about sound diplomacy in a bit. Sound Diplomacy is a London-based consortium of consultants and researchers and economists, and they're focused on helping cities around the world to kind of develop their music infrastructure to become more music cities and to focus on how that is valuable to the city's economic bottom line. We're waiting for Kim Noltemy with the Dallas Symphony Orchestra. I do not yet see her unless you're here, Kim. You might be in, nope, you're not. And then also with us is Edwin Cavanes. Edwin is the founder and owner of the Kessler Theater and Kessler Presents. He's also co-founder and chairman of the Music Venue Alliance of Texas, which I gather probably formed this year, perhaps in response to what was going on. But the great history about the Kessler Theater in particular is Edwin was in another business and decided that Dallas needed this live venue, took a movie theater, a movie house that had been built in 1942. And in the 1950s, it was one of the most popular movie venues in the city of Dallas, and then it closed for decades. And for a while, it was a sweatshop. It was a lot of different things. And so in 2010, Edwin purchased the building, rehabbed it completely, and turned it into one of the most beautiful music venues in the city of Dallas. It's in Oak Cliff. So we have Kate, we have Edwin, and we'll soon be joined by Kim, I'm sure. My name is Randall White. I'm the founder of 24 Hour Dallas. I'll talk a little bit about it at the end of this webinar. Our co-sponsors today are the Business Council for the Arts, an organization that helps recruit business community to be more supportive of the arts organizations and trains future arts leaders out of the business community. Ah, here's Kim. There you go. Hi, Kim. No worries.
Oh, I was on mute. My internet connection went completely down and I had to.
I love that. Welcome to the Zoomosphere. This is kind of, yeah.
I've been on Zoom calls all day and every one of them has worked perfectly until this.
No worries. Like, well, we're live. I just finished introducing Kate and Edwin to everybody. Kim Noltemy is the president and CEO of Dallas Symphony Orchestra, with origins really that trace back to the 1900s and a band of about 40 musicians. The Dallas Symphony Orchestra has grown into one of the largest, if not the largest, performing arts organization in the Southwest, US Southwest. One of the most beautiful parts of the symphony is that its home is this IMPay designed symphonic hall, the Morton Meyerson Symphony Center. And it's ranked as one of the world's most greatest orchestra halls. We're glad to have you with us, Kim. And I also note that she's got a relationship with my alma mater, the University of Oklahoma, and I won't go into that too much. I know that you're kind of an artist in residence, not artist in residence, you're a guest artist or guest speaker for their MFA program, I believe. So welcome to you all. We'll be posting this webinar within 24 hours on the 24-hour Dallas website. And before we start, bathrooms are down the hall. I always like to remind people of that. We hope you brought your own refreshment and snacks because this is a Zoom webinar or Zoominar. And we'll talk first with each of our guests and find out a little bit more about the topic, is live music dead, and how it's affecting their particular sector of the music economy. And then we'll give a chance for them to kind of ask questions of each other if needed. Then we'll go to some questions from each of you. And you can submit your questions either using the Q&A or the chat buttons at the bottom of your screen. So ladies and gentlemen, welcome. We're glad you're here. I'd like to start with Kate, if I may. Kate, Sound Diplomacy, the international global consulting firm that we referenced earlier, because of the nature of its work, Sound Diplomacy has this global perspective on the impact of COVID-19 and the effect that the coronavirus is having on live music around the planet. I want you to get to that, but first, kind of just tell us a little bit about Sound Diplomacy and its areas of focus so people can have a better understanding of what your role is as the U.S. project lead for Sound Diplomacy and what they do. And I think people really want to know about your areas of focus.
Yeah, sure. So thank you for having us, first of all. We're based out of London, but we have offices in Berlin, Barcelona, and now here in the U.S. And we're a music policy advocacy company. So we help communities not only understand with quantifiable data the importance of the music ecosystem and the nighttime economy in their communities, but also we do a lot of asset inventory mapping and economic impact analysis to back that up. And we also advise communities on policies and regulations that are going to better support that music ecosystem. So once you know it's important, you're quantifying what we qualitatively always know is good for a community. We're coming back with more policies and even amendments to existing policies that are going to be more supportive and grow the music ecosystem. So everything's as small as loading zones for musicians in entertainment districts to bigger things like an agent of change principle that protects music venues when developments are happening up and around them. And some softer programming too, like music months and events and festivals that support that music and give more opportunities to perform and showcase music. But we work all over the world with a lot of really great people that know that this is important, and that can be tourism offices, foundations, local, state government, regional governments. And that's, kind of a little bit about us. And so in that line of work, you compound that with something like a pandemic that so gratefully and significantly impacts live music industry and also the cultural economy in general, right? We're talking about all the performing arts. We're talking about so many things that we know to be the quality of life assets that make up a community. And so the whole industry is really hurting. And so we've had to be very responsive and reactive to that, especially in terms of our clients. We can't focus on policy and advocacy work if we're not paying attention to the immediate need that exists. We have artists that are having trouble maybe staying housed, and they're incredibly vulnerable for food and housing and medical care and all of these things. And so we've had to shift and adjust a little bit of our resources to helping provide some pathways for that. So we've done a lot of resource guides for local communities to access funding, other resources, professional development, as well as health and wellness resources for them. And then we've also turned to reopening and how to safely do that and provide some best practices on that that we've offered to a couple of different communities and we still continue to offer. And then in June, we released a Better Cities guide, which was a resiliency manual for communities sort of in this, what I'll call downtime, what can communities do that are really searching for ways to help their music community, but maybe don't know really yet how? These were free things that they could do, or low cost things that they could do to be better set up to support them, and really send a positive message to their music community that, you know, we see you, we see that you're struggling, and here are some things to help. So more recently, our attention has turned to the CARES Act funding, and a huge opportunity that exists there, in that there were hundreds of millions of dollars poured into state and local governments. And right now, as of August 24th, which is the latest US Treasury report, the nation is at a 19.3% spend rate, which means that they're not spending all of that money. And so we've been working with a lot of partners who have been successful in redirecting some of that CARES money at the local level to music, and supporting ways to provide artist relief or professional development, or a variety of avenues to get funding out into the music ecosystem, and how to be really supportive of what's happening and reactive to what's happening right now.
Okay, I don't think I was aware of your kind of advocacy role that you were having at the federal level in the States. I know that some of your colleagues are doing the same in the EU, where there are challenges, similar challenges. Tell me something. Typically when sound diplomacy works with a city to develop a music city plan, I think I've seen the one for London, kind of dove into that one a lot, and have had that parked on our website, 24hourdallas.org. I know it makes sense to focus on a music city plan for a place like New York City or a place like Nashville, but Dallas is not necessarily known for having all the nooks and crannies of music. You know, Edwin's doing his best, and then we have our incredible classical organizations that are doing that. But in terms of that kind of, I'm walking down the street and walking into a live jazz bar kind of place, we don't have that culture here necessarily. So what do you do with cities that don't necessarily have music as ingrained? How do you help extract, how does sound diplomacy help extract a plan for how the city can get on its feet?
Well, you know, there are a lot of cities that feel that way. One of the cities that we're working in, that we're pretty far along in our work, is in Huntsville, Alabama. And when you hear that, you know that they're like Rocket City. That's where you go to space camp. And so they're not necessarily known for being a music city, but just like everywhere else, musicians are persevering, and they're there, and they're doing a lot of good work. So it's part making it visible, it's part making it a priority. And in Huntsville, we're really lucky in that Mayor Tommy Battle there really understands the value of music from a talent recruitment and retainment perspective. And that's a really important key for Huntsville. And so we're figuring out where those little nooks and crannies are. And there's a lot of really cool things happening. And we really rely on our local partners that are on the ground locally, that are working musicians or have recording studios, or are music educators, for those things for us. And really our job is to just, you know, sometimes remind communities how cool they are, and what really cool things that they have that a lot of other places would really like to have. And, you know, I've been to Dallas, and I'll say the same thing. Like, there are a lot of cool things happening in Dallas, and it's a reminder of, it's a branding, and it's an asset inventory of what you have, so you know what you need and where you want to go. So that's kind of what we do a lot, is hold up that mirror.
Okay. Well, and we'll come back to Dallas in particular in a bit. I want to move to Kim, and I mistitled you. You're actually a senior fellow at the University of Oklahoma College of Fine Arts, which is where I went to college, and I came through that particular college. So it's nice to finally meet you. The classical music, also on March 13th, here in Texas at least, and then around the world, the classical music sector also just was stopped in its tracks by the coronavirus. And because the audience perhaps for the performing arts might not be as large as you and I believe it should be, but people may be unaware of the effect of the coronavirus on the classical music world. So talk to me about that. What did it do? How come all of a sudden everything just stopped and we turned off the lights for a while at the Meyerson?
Well, I think most orchestras in the country had their last performances in the first or the second weekend in March. And obviously, different government entities across the country, including in Dallas, basically required that any event with more than 25 or 50 people, varying city to city, was no longer allowed to open their doors. So that, so essentially it stopped because there was no choice. That being said, I would say that almost all of us who are responsible for orchestras and having a public audience in our spaces did not want to be in the position that we were endangering anyone to get coronavirus, which at that time we didn't know a lot about, but we knew that there were a lot of people and really sick in cities in Europe and in New York. And so we needed to take action quickly. I think when it all started, we thought that it would be a month or 2 months or something. We had no idea it was going to carry on as long as it did. Orchestras and opera and even some Broadway shows all have the challenge of the musicians performing in a very tight space, and how if someone's sick and something's very contagious, obviously it's going to spread very quickly. Likewise, various halls around the world have very little lobby space, and they also the seats are close together and all that. So it's pretty hard to escape being close to people. With all that, it was just really, a health and safety issue, even if we weren't required to close. And it's a tough thing to figure out when is the right moment to start again and how to do so safely.
Right. Now, and the other thing too, I think a lot of people don't think about, and this also applies to Edwin, is that in the organizational ecosystem, that's the symphony, you are more than just the musicians on the stage and the conductor. Your whole operation is behind the scenes, more people behind the scenes, the people in the ticketing and the marketing and the development office, and then the people with whom you may talk to us a little bit about how this closure of the symphony has really about a bigger universe than just the people we see on stage.
Of course, every performing arts organizations has all the people behind the scenes to make it happen. As you mentioned, the marketing and PR, the box office, those I think are pretty, understandable to everyone. There's a whole fundraising department in most not-for-profits. There's the accounting department, the stage crew, all the technical people, the lighting people, sound engineers, all of that. There's a cleaning crew. We have a very large building, and they clean it every day. Now they even clean it many times a day with what's happening. But and then there's just all of the security. Just every different component. Most orchestras have at least 50% of their employees or contractors are not on the stage to make everything happen. And we did our best to minimize the impact on not only our orchestra members, but our staff. And we ended up having to do 17 furloughs after our PPP money ran out. But our intention is to have people back from furlough at the end of the year. And that isn't possible for every organization, but since we're open now with very small audiences, we believe we can do that.
Okay, well, tell us about that. So I know I read this last weekend that you're doing some things in the Net Strauss Square, which is outside. You're doing some smaller concerts? Are you doing things inside too as well? Tell us what's up. What's coming up?
So actually, Annette Strauss Square is AT&T Performing Arts venue. So
Tours. Okay.
yeah, they started doing a couple of concerts there. We have been doing concerts inside since September 4th in the Meyerson Symphony Center. Small orchestra concerts, anywhere from 22 musicians to 35 musicians. We've had 3 weekends of concerts so far. We have concerts on Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Sometimes we have 3, sometimes we have 4.
Oh.
We had 65% of our subscribers actually renewed for the season, even though they didn't know if we were going to have a concert or not.
Right.
And so consequently, we're having performances so that our subscribers can be able to see concerts in small groups. We initially started with 50 to 75 people, and this weekend we're going to go to almost 100 people, which sounds so small in a venue of 1,800. But if you think about the ingress and egress, that's the problem. It's not the hall itself. We can have a lot more people in the hall safely, but how do we get them in and out without them being in contact with other people,
Right.
with elevators and food services and all that? So we're not intermission and no food service.
Right. Well, I guess our buildings were not designed for this, and that's an interesting kind of change that's beginning to happen in the architectural realm about how do we design for future pandemics. I can't believe that's where we are, but that's where we are. The Meyerson and the Symphony are such an incredible experience. I would like to encourage anybody. Your concerts are, your weekend concerts, even these smaller ones are available. Single ticket sales, I would assume, are available, or the subscribers got most of the tickets?
Yes, so starting October 1st, we're going to open some tickets up to non-subscribers. And our website is mydso.com if anyone wants to take a look at that. And then we'll also put our holiday series on sale then on October 1st.
And so is it your sense, are you projecting yet as to when you're going to get back fully underway?
I mean, it's pretty hard to project. I mean, we're hoping that by Christmas we could potentially have audiences in the hundreds.
Right.
Don't think that we would have, I don't think this whole year will ever go above 50%.
Okay.
And again, we're doing it based on the statistics in Dallas, the levels of contagion, the average 2-week numbers of their growing and closing, so growing or shrinking. So all of that really puts it in a question mark area, right? Because how will we really know? What we'd like to do is be at 50% capacity by the end of the season. But what we will be able to do is totally dependent on what happens in Dallas, North Texas, and obviously in the US in general.
And typically your season ends when?
It ends at the end of June.
Okay. Okay. All right. Thanks, Kim. I want to come back to you a little bit more. That's very helpful. Again, I would like to encourage anybody, especially if you've never been into the Meyerson, to hear a concert with the Symphony. MyDSO.com. Is that correct? Yeah. MyDSO.com is the website. Check it out. Go, support our musicians and help us bring all of this back to life. Let me segue now over to Edwin. Edwin and I go back farther than either one of us cares to admit. In promoting this webinar, Edwin, Edwin has the Kessler Theater, Kessler Presents, which is a series presenting entity that puts concerts in a lot of different places in Texas and Oklahoma. He also has a performance venue now in Houston. In putting this webinar together, I pulled some quotes from you that were in a Dallas Morning News story. And in that story, you state that the music industry, and in this instance, we're moving from classical music to more popular music forms. You said the music industry is in intensive care. What did you mean, Edwin?
I think we all know what intensive care is. And first of all, let me just thank you for hosting. I've already learned some stuff from Kate and Kim. Nice to meet you finally. We've been on several emails together. But what I mean by that, Randall, is our industry has been gone from complete full. I mean, we had the biggest year in the history of live music at $25 billion industry. A lot of that is drawn because that's really, as William Bonney said, why do you rob banks? Is because that's where the money's at. The industry, the live music industry, changed significantly when things went to streaming, when you could actually no longer had to buy CDs. You could actually buy your songs for $1 a pop. And when that happened, you know, that's when you started seeing musicians really get out and start touring a lot. The latest statistic from Coopers and Lybrand came out, and it's almost 78% of all revenues driven from artists are from live music. So they've got to get out there. They've got to actually perform. And I think you said on May, I think our last show was on May the 14th. We have venues Dallas, Houston, Austin, Oklahoma City, and Tulsa, East Texas and West Texas. So what immediately happened, like with everyone, is we didn't know what was going on. Now, 6 months later, we still haven't done a show. We understand exactly what's going on. We're down almost 90% in revenues. That's not just me. That's, you know, all music. And the 10% is probably where the code word now is, I guess the buzzword is pivot. I mean, I feel like I'm in the online merchandise sales now, or what have you, and selling some different things. You get your coffee cup for the Kessler, by the way. I'll give you the website later. But realistically, when this all happened, like a lot of us, we understood there was something out there called payroll protection. Wasn't sure what it meant, but we did know that we were going to have some shows rescheduled, and there's a difference between rescheduled and canceled. Okay. So we got hustling pretty quick, and we just basically took our March and April shows and rolled those to July and August and thought, okay, that's it, that we're going to be great, right? That was 68 shows, and we rescheduled 68 shows, and then now we've had to reschedule them again. So the net of it is intensive care. There's been study after study. I'd like to say that the live music capital of the world in Austin, the Austin Chamber of Commerce commissioned a study to see who was hurting the worst, because as Kate had indicated, a lot of the money coming out of the federal government will go to the state and then down to the local level, and they need to do a needs-based analysis. So they ran an analysis, and they said, well, how can we do this fairly? So they contacted the hobby school out of the University of Houston, and they conducted a survey, and basically it came back that by Halloween, if there was not any relief that came through, that over 90% of the venues in Austin would be closed down. At the same time, I'm a member of a national organization called the National Independent Venue Association, NIVA for short. We're a coalition of 2,700 venues, and their numbers were strikingly similar with the membership, 86%. And then, as you had alluded to, I started the Music Venue Alliance of Texas, which comes from the Music Venue Trust. They started that over in Great Britain, and they're about 2 months ahead of us in what they were doing, and their numbers were very similar, that if we didn't get any relief, 80% of the venues would close. So it's not like you just get to that date and they close. They're closing every day. We lost 2 more just today out of Austin. Barracuda announced that they're down. Okay. You know, not that everybody on the call goes to Lizard Lounge, but it's a 25-year institution in Dallas closed. You know, there's 5 or 6 venues in Dallas, and where we're at right this minute in time is there is a bill called the Save Our Stages bill right now on the floor in Congress. Okay. We have worked very, very hard, and I would say Dallas is doing it as good as anybody. All 7 of our congressional delegates, which is 4 Democrats and 3 Republicans, have all endorsed either the Restart Act or the Save Our Stages Act. It deserves to be called. It's a $10 billion. 10 billion sounds like a lot, but in a $2 trillion stimulus package, it's 0.5%, and you have the ability to save the entire small to mid-sized music venues across the country with that. But right now, I suspect if nothing is passed, and we need to get it done in the next couple of weeks, just to have time to fully implement it before the election,
Hmm.
If this thing doesn't work and it doesn't go through and it doesn't get called, you're looking at an entire collapse in the small to mid-sized music economy. So when I say the intensive care, I mean it's over for upwards of 75 to 80% of these small businesses, and many of them have already gone out of business. Institutions that started Janis Joplin, things will never ever get back. So that's what I mean by intensive care when I was quoted on that.
Okay. Okay. And so, so we talk about pivoting, and in addition to selling merchandise and merch, which I'm sure that Kim, you also have with the Symphony Orchestra, you also begun doing some innovating in other ways. You're moving, did I read about a concert series you're doing that will be outdoors at the Kessler here in Dallas?
Yeah, so Randall, the first thing we did was, I mean, we're all on the same page. Safety is our top priority, it has to be, okay? So when we started working with this, how the Music Venue Alliance came together is, at the governor's request, kind of what you call super spreader industries, as you had indicated. Everybody understands the cautionary tale of what happened in Korea, and one person went and infected 35 people. Music venues were not even going to be considered until the third phase of opening. So a good friend that works at the Texas Music Office, who also got appointed to the chair of the Arts, Entertainment, and Culture chair for the task force, said, hey, we need to kind of come and figure this thing out. And for the first time in Texas's music history, we all had to come together and speak with a unified voice. It didn't take long to realize that the Restaurant Association was extraordinarily well represented, and they were getting open and we weren't, okay? So we worked, literally with venues from Texarkana to El Paso and Amarillo down to Brownsville. It came up, we found a group called the Event Safety Alliance that was putting their plans together. We were a contributor to that. And we presented to the governor's office a very detailed report of how we would open safely. Nothing against our legislators, they have their hands full, but they don't know my business. We are the specialists in our business. So what we basically did is we took the CDC guidelines and then we overlaid on the top of the CDC guidelines even stricter policies of what we could do. And we looked at it from not only the patron standpoint, we looked at it from the artist standpoint, and we looked at it from our employee standpoint. We came up with what we felt like was a pretty good plan. We submitted it. We got called back a number of times working with the general counsel and other folks on the task force, tweaked a few things. And on, I think it was May the 18th, we were allowed to open at a limited capacity of 25%. And then eventually on June the 2nd, move up to 50%. But there is a little bit of a misnomer, and Kim can tell you this, based on having an 1,800 cap facility and being able to do 100 people. It really is the lesser of 50% or how you can 6 foot socially distance and also provide a safe environment. So for us as a 600 cap venue, we're comfortable right now. We can do 128 capacity in Dallas. And we can end up doing right at about 175 people. That's the way it has laid out. So we're fortunate. We've developed a culture at our place that it's a listening environment. And there are a lot of great Texas artists that could put a guitar in their hand and hold an audience. So we've also been fortunate in the fact that we've been doing 2 shows in one night for many, many, many years. So what that really means is we just announced a good, a good artist, a great artist from Dallas by way of New Orleans, who now lives in Austin or Nashville, named Charlie Crockett. And Charlie is going to do our first Texas residency program. It'll be a 3-night stand, 6 shows in Dallas, Thursday, Friday, Saturday. And then he'll pivot the next week and go to Houston. And there again, if he can sell those out. And Charlie's got a real opportunity. He trusts us. I'm not saying anything that has not been public knowledge. Charlie had a heart condition and in December had an operation on his heart. So Charlie's not playing in just any venue. I mean, it's a tremendous responsibility for our organization to take that on. But Charlie trusts us, and we trust Charlie, and we trust our patrons candidly. I think everybody kind of knows, they've seen the viral videos of us throwing people out. You know, our house, our rules, this is it. It's full on mask. That's just the way it is. We take our safety very, very serious. But we will launch for the first time in 8 months back in October. And then we've got a bunch more to announce after that. But we're going to take it slow. And we've got our first 12 shows with one artist over 2 venues. It'll help Charlie. It'll help us.
That's terrific. Now tell me, did I hear you say that you're going to be doing shows back to back in one evening though as well?
Yeah, there's about an hour and a half gap between, so a little earlier start time and a little later kick time on the second shows.
Okay.
That's been pretty standard fare. You know, there are a lot of things going on, and I will mention this. Texas, and Dallas specifically, is a touring town versus a club town. Live music capital of the world is Austin. It's club town. You can walk in at 5 o'clock after happy hour, and you might see our good friends down at Antone's. They may carry 6, 8, 8 artists over the course of an evening, one after another after another. Ours is really, you buy a ticket, you come to the show, that's your evening out.
Okay.
We move folks out, sanitize the room, and do it all over again. So,
well, and that's one of the things we talk about too in the 24-hour economy is sometimes we think we need more space. I can't space people out. Well, one of the ways you space people out is also in time, so that you continue, you expand hours so that more performances, more concerts, more dining, more can last further into the night, because we kind of forget about that time as a means by which we can space people out. Well, let me ask a couple of questions here, and then I've got a few things that, gosh, some people really, and I think some of you are already answering some of the questions here. I see that someone asked Kim in particular, isn't an organization like the Symphony more funded by donors and sponsors? And you said, Kim, I believe that I think they were thinking, oh yeah, but you don't really need ticket sales to cover expenses. But your response was?
So most performing arts that are not for profit are more than 50% donations, but definitely we're losing $12 million in revenue as a result of, a ticket sales year like that. So that's a lot of money to have to make up or cut expenses.
Right. Oh yeah, no. And I guess the donation money is also hard to come by, because what have the donors got to show for it, I suppose? Has it been a little bit more of a struggle too to get the contributed income?
It is more challenging at this time because we're competing against hospitals, social service agencies, and now is a time where homeless and children's causes and food necessity is obviously a higher priority than an entertainment as important as we feel our music is.
Right. Okay, interesting. And then I saw Kate too, somebody asked you about what other languages do you speak? And I guess the assumption is that since sound diplomacy is global, that you might be the global representative, but you are the US representative, but you have colleagues around the world, right?
That's correct, yes. For North America, but we have in Berlin and Barcelona as well, and expanding into South America and Italy and France soon. So we have team calls every week, those in English, and all of our Slack and communication in English. But if you need those work in those languages, we can provide. And if you're in those countries, the work is in those languages too.
Right. Okay, that's right. I mean, I communicate every day through my phone and a WhatsApp app. I talk with nighttime economy advocates in cities around the globe, and fortunately, everybody speaks English, or mostly, because my German and Lithuanian is really, really bad. Kate and Edwin, somebody asked, in smaller music markets, like a Denton, Texas, single venue closing would eliminate close to 1/3 of the live music shows per year. Are smaller markets serving regional and local acts, especially unsigned recording acts? Are they facing a greater threat, or is there funding and opportunities in these smaller cities that doesn't necessarily exist in a major market by virtue of the fact that they're smaller? I guess I'm thinking particularly in Denton. Are they doing better in smaller markets because they're a smaller market and they can attract a different audience and a different performer?
I'll jump in right there. We're all at hurting. We're all in the intensive care unit. Some of us are in better shape than the others, right? If there's no gigs, there's no gigs. It doesn't matter what market. Arguably, Denton might be, the cost of living might be a little bit less there. I can speak, I have, 80 people working for me at the height of this. And a lot of those were gig economy. A lot of people that want to be the next great, Maren Morris or, Post Malone or gosh, Leon Bridges, it's a great story where he was washing dishes at Del Frisco before he started open night at Maplewood Motor Lounge and then became Leon Bridges, right? So the point you had asked, Randall, and I missed, is we have now pivoted one other time. Besides the indoor shows, we've opened up a green space. We'll start this weekend, Thursday, Friday, Saturday. And we'll run that through the fall, and everything that he's just talking about, all the local unsigned acts, you can look on our website at thekessler.org. That's exactly who that's for. It's a little bit different business model. So in our scenario, we pull deeply from Denton. Brent Best is one of my favorite songwriters in the world who is from the Denton area. And of course, Snarky Puppy and the great UNT Jazz School.
Oh yeah.
But the point is I think it affects all of them. But if you've got a guitar, there's nothing more entrepreneurial than having a guitar and a microphone and going out there. You can socially distance a lot easier. Kim, I don't know how you do it with 35 artists. I mean, that's a pretty amazing feat upon itself, just to put the staging together. But I think a lot of these folks, they're Uber drivers, they're doing what they can. And I will say this, Randall, and this is what I love about our artists and love about our industry. We have the greatest supply chain in the world, bar none. Our supply chain is new product coming from artists. And I have seen a tremendous amount during this pandemic of new one-off songs that are coming out. So I think those artists are creating right now. And I think the demand has not gone away. And if we can provide a safe environment for them, I think it's going to be an embarrassment of riches, because when we get back to this, I think people have been so pent up. I'm not going to say this is quite like the pandemic of the 1920s and we're going to have the roaring 20s again, but it kind of feels like it's shaping up 100 years later like that. Demand is the same, if not better. The supply of great new product is coming online even more so. And I think that we're going to be in great shape after this is over. Just got to get to the other side. That's the problem.
Yeah, let me dive in here too, Ed. When you mentioned something just a second ago about if it's safe for the performers come back, well, one of our colleagues in the nighttime economy from Seattle is on this call and following along. And he said, what about performers though? And I'd ask this of Kim first and Edwin. You know, we're seeing right now in schools, the teachers are going, I don't know if I want to go back yet. Are you encountering that with performers, Kim?
Well, so we're in a unique position because we actually are COVID testing all of our players, crew, and conductors, soloists every day. So starting the day before the first rehearsal. So if testing can be available on a massive scale and much more cheaply than it is now, then people will not be afraid to perform. People will not be afraid to go into a venue and watch and be close to people, because they'll know that everyone there has been tested and it's negative. So we were fortunate that we were able to connect with a partner to be able to do that, and that's helped dramatically. Nonetheless, as Edwin mentioned, we have 35 people on the stage and they're 6 feet apart even after being COVID tested. So that means we have a big stage extension on our stage, and It's set up, it doesn't look anything like your typical symphony concert would look like, because normally they're crammed in and they share a stand and all that. So, you know, testing is the key. I mean, everyone talks about the vaccine, but you have to get a vaccine, distributed vaccine. People have to take the vaccine and it has to work. Whereas if we can get testing going on a significant level, that'll make a huge difference for the entertainment business.
Edwin, are you finding artists, performing arts, or Kate, are you finding performing artists? Okay, I'll ask you first, Kate. Are you finding performing artists that aren't quite ready to go back and perform yet?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think what Kim and Edwin was saying, I just want to like echo that, you know, when we talk about these recovery, the Save Our Stages and the Restart and the HITS Acts at the federal level, that is going to help communities, including like Denton, right? Like these are the places that this is designed to help. But what Kim was just talking about, especially in the musical theater, the symphonies, we see a lot of hesitation from artists themselves to play, and we're just not seeing any shows booking, or we're seeing them rescheduled, we're seeing whole seasons canceled. And I think that there is, you know, we're trying to facilitate some sort of social contract between audiences, artists, and venue owners to say, like, I will come to your show, but I need to see from you, the venue owner, that you're adhering to these guidelines. And I also think we're going to see a new gig economy worker in the job of like sanitation enforcer or like safety measure enforcer. Somebody going around and saying, you know, hey, I noticed you're not wearing your mask. You know, you'll have to leave or put that on. It's just added to the many things that a venue owner is trying to do on a given night, right? So I think we're going to see some of that happening to try to enforce politely. But you know, another thing that I don't hear talked about enough is there's also this politicization of like, I'm a mask wearer, you know, I'm not. And so what we're also finding is that on top of being hit by the pandemic, venue owners are also being berated on Yelp and on social platforms for, you know, rudeness of like, well, he made me wear my mask, and you know, all of these things. So the venues are trying to do the right thing and protect the artists who maybe have a heightened sense or level of expectation for what they expect to be safe to be able to perform and be out in public. Those venues that are upholding that higher level than maybe the, you know, the baseline of local government regulations are oftentimes punished by the public for upholding those. So I think we, again, just to bring it back full circle, I think it's a social contract between audiences, venue owners, and artists to say, these are the things that we agree with and these are the things that we expect. And if, you know, that's what we have to uphold if we're going to see any live performance anytime soon.
Okay. I have a question here. Thanks. That's that situation of having to be the enforcer of mask policy, as well as also affecting all of our sociable businesses, bars, restaurants, even, you know, convenience stores. You know, we've all seen the TikTok videos. So I've got a good question here for Edwin. Can production companies or companies that are not necessarily performance-based but are affected by the industry, stagehands, etc., production companies, facilities that create the framework for concert stages, etc., can they become involved in the whole Music Venue Alliance or Save Our Stages or NEVA or any of those organizations?
Yeah, of course. The membership is free for Music Venue Alliance of Texas and also for NEVA. But really what the question is getting to is, can I get some money out for my group specifically, okay? And what the bill, the way it's written, has a very specific definition of what qualifies. And I know it's actually been tweaked. We helped write some of the legislation. We did a bill that got deemed the honky tonk bill at the state legislative house a couple of years ago, and we were able to move some of that language in with Senator Cornyn's office to sponsor that bill. So specifically, if you go to congress.gov, and then it'll say, you know, look at the bill. You can type in Save Our Stages there. It'll pull up the House number. I'm calling off the top of my head. There's a Senate number and a House number. And under that, it will say, look at the text. And the text is about, it's not really that long. It's only about 10 pages. 10 pages for $10 billion is pretty efficient for government work. But in there, you can specifically look at how they define different organizations. So I've not looked at it, but I do think there could be some relief in there for those organizations. I didn't write the bill, so I don't know that specific question, but congress.gov, type in Save Our Stages, and it'll bring up the House bill number, and you can look at the language in there that'll describe it.
Kate has yeah, go ahead, Kate.
I just put both the Save Our Stages Restart and HITS acts in the chat. So if you want to
chat, the links directly to the bill and directs to Save Our Stages are right there in the chat if you guys want to check that out. So I'm encouraged by, I mean, we know somebody else said, and again, a colleague from Seattle said that once these venues close, whether it's a classical venue or a pop music venue of some type, and I use pop very widely. Once these venues close, the odds are of them coming back open are not so great. One in London, is one famous venue in London now is a club venue, has actually been converted now into an art gallery. Ouch. I love visual arts, but I also love the rhythm of a city. We all want to hear the music of the night, as they talked about in the musical. So my last question to each of you, Kate, is music dead? Is live music dead? Is live music wounded? Is it dead?
No, I don't think so. I mean, you know, as a policy nerd, I just feel like what is this pandemic showing us? It's showing, it's highlighting all our vulnerabilities. It's highlighting all the things that we as music advocates have always been pounding on the desk about for years, right? It's like, we have to diversify income streams for artists. We have to teach professional development about copywriting and IP. We have to expect that they are, and treat individual artists like entrepreneurs. We have to talk about why they need an LLC and how that protects them. We need to, you know, I love this term, but we need to get them thinking about their mailbox money. What is going to be their retirement plan? How are we getting them to understand how to save for saving or for taxes and all of those things? And the same goes for venues. If we're not using this as an opportunity to say, hey, this was really hard and it didn't take much. You were, you know, 1 month and you were on the verge. How do we do better, right? How do we use this as a jarring pull into, we have to be better prepared and we have to do more? The unfortunate thing is that some of the best music venues are not operating at that level. And so it's emotional that these homes of such great experiences and these beautiful performances that we all have in our memories are sometimes the ones that are the most vulnerable. And so this is really, again, that is a crack in our system that we have to fix, and nothing like this pandemic to show us that. So, to provide a solution there, I think that the funding mechanisms and the study that we can do from this pandemic and understanding where those vulnerabilities are, how many are vulnerable, and providing that with the crazy economic impact and quality of life benefit that music brings to any community, right. Regardless of if they're a shiny Nashville or Denton, Texas, music is everywhere. And it's a universal language that brings us together, and it's really a health issue. And so we have to identify ways to fix those vulnerabilities. And I think we have like a once in a lifetime opportunity to do that here. And so that's why we're really advocating for Save Our Stages, Restart HITS, and combining that with trying to redirect some of this CARES funding for music, because if we're not putting those safety nets in place, it's gonna be a long, long, long recovery, and some of them may never come back, like you said.
Yeah, it is a great opportunity right now. That's one reason why 24-hour Dallas is kind of staking up. We see the opportunity to kind of help shape and guide what our nighttime economy is going to be like after this. It's so wounded. Kim, is classical music dead, or is it going to change dramatically? Are we going to be listening to people performing behind plexiglass shields? Are we wounded?
You know, I think we are hurting right now, but I think it's actually a transformational moment for the classical music industry because, first of all, for years we've been working hard to try to make digital content meaningful and kind of integral to our attendees. And because the average age of classical music attendees is older than, say, pop music, it was a challenge. And this whole crisis has actually change that whole perspective. And now many of our older patrons are rapidly interested in digital content. Secondly, our orchestras are amazing artists on the stage, work their lives. They're at the top of their field, you know, to get these jobs. And now they realize at a time like this, they need to help with the marketing, the fundraising, the flexibility to do things differently than we all had been doing it for years. So I think those are two really important positive changes that will come out of this. And as Edwin said, we just have to wait to get through this. But once we are through it, we will be in a better place in many respects.
I love that. I love that. And I love the fact that artists are realizing the role they can have in that. And perhaps I suppose the unions are also going along with that at this time. Edwin, is live music dead?
No, it's hurting. It's in intensive care, as I said. And if we don't get Save Our Stages passed in the next 10 days, you're going to see a lot of music venues go away. And so I'll send you a link that you can send to the folks that join this call. We need to advocate across the nation. I had a call with, I've now ran out of targets in Texas. There's 38 of them, by the way, and we've got about 22 of them on board. But now we moved and had a call with Senator Bozeman out of Arkansas's office. We're picking them off. We're at 42 senators right now. We need 8 more. We know where some soft targets are, but this all comes down to the next 8 days. If that does not happen, you're looking at maybe 2 in 10 music venues still staying around. But let's just get to the other side, as we had talked about. We lost 675,000 people in the pandemic in 1918 and 1919, followed up by a recession/depression. And then immediately after that, it went into 8 years of the roaring 20 speaks for itself. Point is, if we can pivot and get to the other side, the product is there and absolutely the demand is there, okay? And you said, right now we're talking to patrons, what were we gonna do if patrons don't come back? It's a little different problem. How do we get patrons back and make sure they're going to be safe, okay? So if you can just survive and get to the other side, but 7 months in, we've gotta have some relief, or some of these, nobody's built for that. 1 in 10 is built for that. So I wouldn't say it's dead. It all believes in, if you believe in afterlife, because we're going to be there. I'm hopeful that by spring of next year, we'll be ramping back up a little bit and be full on by summer of next year is my hopes. But don't get me wrong, Charlie Crockett does not want to play 12 shows in 2 weeks. Okay, nor does my staff, nor do I. We're just doing that because that's what it takes right now. So.
Okay. All right. So just to summarize, if you'd like to learn more about how you can support the live music industry, I'll be getting some information from Edwin that I can share with you. You can also find out what's going on at the Kessler at the Kessler.org.com. Are you Kessler?
Yeah, either way, we'll get it. Kessler.org is where we started.
Kessler.org.
Kessler.com wasn't available, but either one goes there now.
Okay, and then we can funnel you into the other entities. Kate Durio with Sound Diplomacy. You can go to sounddiplomacy.org, and that will also introduce you to their wonderful world. Kim Noltemy, mydso.org will also plug you into what's happening at the Dallas Symphony Orchestra and how you can support the symphony and attend concerts if you're not a subscriber. The single tickets coming up soon. Our time is about to wrap up. I want to tell you that next month, on Monday, October 5th, 24 Hour Dallas is going to host another Zoominar. This one is going to be of particular interest to restaurants, bars, hotels, urban planners, commercial real estate folks, and leaders of neighborhoods, because we're going to be talking about something that the city of Dallas is kicking the tires on, all puns intended. They're looking at a new parking ordinance, citywide parking ordinance that would affect how we park some of those places that provide customers for restaurants and bars and hotels, etc. Just to let you know that the whole genesis of 24-Hour Dallas started several years ago when the city decided that it wanted to clamp down on some parking opportunities for patrons of nighttime businesses. So we pushed back. So we'll see how this goes, but we're going to talk about it next month, October 5th. There's details about it on our website at 24hourdallas.org. Our panelists will include Dallas City Council member Chad West, who is also the council member for the Kessler Theater, and the chair of the city's plan commission, Tony Shadid, and a couple of other gentlemen, including our own Mike Brown, a sustainable design engineer. Kate Durio, Kim Noltemy, Edwin Cavanes, thank you very much for joining us on this Zoominar. My thanks also to the Business Council for the Arts, the Kessler, and the Music Venue Alliance of Texas for helping co-sponsor this particular program. I invite you to become involved with 24-Hour Dallas. We are an all-volunteer organization. I am a volunteer. Everybody involved is a volunteer. By ignoring what takes place in the city of Dallas between 6 p.m. and 6 a.m., we're leaving half of our city's potential on the table. Join us as a business, as an agency, as an individual. Help us create a safe, vibrant, and diverse nighttime culture for businesses, residents, and guests. That's our mission. That's a thank you for joining us, and cheers to you all. Thanks again.
Thank you, Randall.
Thank you for having us.
Thanks, Randall.
Be safe. Be
All
safe.
right. Take care.